And delighted as well to say Fergus Farrell joins us in the studio. Morning, Fergus. How are you doing?
Good morning. I'm good.
Thanks a million for coming into us. You've got the shorts on. We've just been saying you're a brave man. Fair play on a cold day like it is. People who have been watching the show with any sort of regularity would be familiar with your story. And alongside Damian, obviously, you both set out from New York a couple of months ago to row to Galway, and we'll get into that story. And there's plenty to it. How have you been over the last while, I suppose? Because your journey ended a bit earlier than you would have hoped.
Yeah, unfortunately, my journey ended 14 days after I started. But it took me a long time to recover from it. I don't know how Damian's doing it right now, because he was 112 days out in sea and he hasn't stopped going since he arrived. But for the first 4 or 5 weeks, I was in absolute bits. Couldn't have no energy, no nothing. But now I'm flying it again, back training, back enjoying life. So really, really going well now again.
It must have been hugely disappointing, obviously, when the decision had to be made.
So obviously I've looked back at it many, many times, and no matter how I look at it, I still know the right decision was made, but I cannot get over that feeling of disappointment.
Really?
And being gutted, because we set our sets out to get a world record, 55 days, 13 hours and odd minutes. And up to that point, we were, I would say, on track to do it. And then with me getting off the boat, it destroyed all chances, all hope. So that for me is just gut-wrenching, because we had put in such an effort to put ourselves into that position. And then when we got onto the Gulf Stream and the boat started moving at 4, 5, 6 knots per hour with less effort, that's when I started failing, which was, it was.
So you started to feel unwell a little bit almost for the previous couple of days, or was it more suddenly that it?
It was a gradual thing, really, but over kind of 2 days. So I remember the first day. Now, because I found it tough for all the time. I won't lie. There was nothing comfortable about it. There was nothing easy about it. It was relentless. But I had myself geared up for that. But what I hadn't myself geared up for was having absolutely no energy and not knowing how to deal with that. And the heat was also something that I struggled massively with. But say about 2 days before I actually got taken off Crushing McCree, I started feeling, lethargic, getting deeper breaths, taking longer to recover. And so I started, because we hadn't been eating well, I kind of forced more food down to me to see, was it just energy I needed? Then I said, right, I need to start drinking more water, see was dehydration, because when we went out on the Galway Bay for 2 nights, I was pretty much 40 odd hours. I remember I got a severe headache, and that was just pure dehydration. Right. So I was here going, maybe I'm not drinking enough water. I had been drinking loads of water, but I just took more water on board. That didn't help me. The food didn't help me. And this was over a course of period of time. And then I went into the second night, and that's when I literally, poor old Damo, after his 2-hour shift of getting good mileage in, I was getting on the seat to do my rowing, and I was doing nothing. I couldn't do anything. And literally, he'd get in the cabin, I'd row for a few minutes. I was falling over the oars, just no energy whatsoever. I wasn't sore anywhere. It was just, there was nothing, no life to me. And I was deep breaths. And when I was trying to row, then I was doing 2 breaths per stroke rather than 1 breath. And then when I wasn't rowing, I was just really labour breathing. And then I'd lie down on the deck, and I don't know if you've seen the boat, but there was absolutely no place on that deck you could lie that'd be comfortable. But I didn't care, because I couldn't stay sitting up on the seat. So I just lie down there, and there'd be something sticking in me somewhere, but I actually just didn't care because I was resting. And say maybe half an hour would pass by, and I'd try and get back on the seat. And once I got back onto that seat, I was exhausted again. And then the last straw was, so there was a compass right in front of us that I had to have lit up to see it. Now, I wouldn't have the best vision. Damian's really good vision, but a few days beforehand, there was no problems watching that or looking at it and making sure that I was rowing in the right direction. But for that last night, it was complete blur. I couldn't see it properly. So even to keep the boat going in the right direction was becoming impossible, because to see it, I'd had to get off the seat, get down, look at it. And by the time I was back up in the seat, a wave would have come and I could have been could have been turned anyway again. So even that was just.
Is there like a level of frustration? I'd imagine there is a level of frustration with that, Fergus, as well, because you know better than anyone what your body's capable of. So when your body's almost betraying you like that at the time when you've revved it up to not do that, it must be quite frustrating. Is probably a decent word to use.
So that's a good question. Yeah, there is a frustration, but I think the frustration was more around not knowing why I couldn't do it, because as I said, like leading up to this, I'd done plenty of rowing, and I'd done a lot of fitness, a lot of weight training. I thought I had, from my accident going back in 2018, and I suppose this is my first ever mammoth challenge to do. And I thought I had my body prepared and trained, and my mindset, everything boxed off to take on this challenge. But when I look back at it now, maybe I should have, because obviously Damian, he's been doing Everests, the Seven Summits, he's rowed another ocean, he's done, the Mar de Sables, so many different things, and he's been building up the resilience in his body. Whereas I've come off having a spinal cord injury into one of the biggest challenges you can do for mankind. So maybe when I look back at it, I should have maybe done some smaller challenge to build up that resilience to see where I was. But I just thought, because of what I came through, and I felt very strong and I felt very good, and the training and everything, the mindset was great. I thought I just could do it and I could nail it. But maybe just the body just gave up. I honestly don't know.
Like, for people who maybe are unfamiliar with that story, like the accident in 2018, I mean, to get in a boat and attempt to do this was quite remarkable, and even to last, I know it's no consolation, but through 2 weeks in the Atlantic rowing, considering what you went through, you might just tell people who maybe aren't familiar with that story what happened there.
Okay, so 26th of October 2018, very simple workplace accident. I was lifting a metal bench, picked it up with another guy, and in an instant, ruptured my T9, T10 and T11, and one of those discs leaked into my spinal cord and severed my spinal cord by 90%. Well, they call it pinching, and left me completely paralysed, and I was classed as a grade A spinal cord injury. And I was rushed up to the Mallory Hospital, got emergency surgery done, and ultimately I was told from that point onwards that I was going to be in a wheelchair for the rest of my life, and that what the medical profession were going to do for me was make my life as comfortable as possible, and that was it. And after that, I was given a stat that 5%. The stat was, if you get movement after 72 hours, you have a 5% chance of gaining some sort of strength.
Right.
Some strength, not walking, just strength in your movement. I didn't get into it after 72 hours, and after 21 days, I'll never forget it, up down the St. Finbarrs in Galway, because I'd been transferred down to Galway waiting for my bed in the NRH. I moved my big right toe at like 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning, and I was here going, am I hallucinating or what is going on? And I had to wait until like 7 o'clock in the morning before a person came around. I was like all night going, is that moving, and so from there on it took off, and thankfully I said, I'm here. I was able to walk into you today and have this chat, and like when something's taken away from you, you realise how much it is to you, it's so hence why I've done this, tried to take on this challenge. I want to try and show people that don't ever give up on yourself, push yourself as hard as you can, because you're the only person who's going to do it.
Yeah.
Obviously, you're going to have physios, you're going to have doctors around you, you'll have everybody around you helping you. But if you don't want to do it, they're not going to force you to do it. So that was why I took on this challenge, was to show people, like, you can do whatever you want to do if you have the right mindset and you apply yourself correctly.
Can you take us back to the night? You talk about and it's really important that you've given the context of where you're coming from, because as Shane said, it really puts the achievement in good context. Take it back to the night where it was the night, wasn't it, where you finally began to say, listen, this is just not happening for me, it's not working out. I presume you tried to fight that initially, as you've said, for the first little while, and then it comes to a point where you're like, that's it, I'm going to have to talk to him now. Is that how it happens? Or
yeah, it was, because I was like, he was going into the cabin, because literally our changeover was like within like you get the 10-minute call, right? Wake up and you
yourself
literally,
ready,
get yourself ready, get out, and you're back in. And especially at night, it was just like literally you wouldn't see each other at all. You're like, "Hi, how are we getting on?" And you know, so. But I was like during that time, I was just there was nothing. I thought if I'll rest here for half an hour, and I'll get my energy back, and I'll go, and then the next 2-hour shift that I was meant to be rowing again after going into the cabin and trying to sleep in the cabin. I thought, over those periods of times I'd build up my energy again, whereas when I was meant to be rowing, I wasn't rowing. So that extra bit of rest and then going back into the cabin for those, it would start building my, I get a bit of energy back and the extra food. And then the last straw was I got a big chocolate bar and a big bag of Haribo's just to give me this insulin spike. And again, just flat, nothing. At that stage, then I said, and then obviously my mind started chasing. I'm here going, what's going on with me, And the last time I felt this type of really struggling to breathe was it was in the Mater Hospital. I got blood clots in my lungs about a week after I got the operation because I was still in the bed, and about a day before that, I just remember that real struggling to breathe. Now, a totally different scenario as to the boat, but I was remember that real struggling to breathe and just never seemed to have enough oxygen. That was exactly how I felt on the boat. Whether that was from anxiety or stresses, I have no idea. But I just remember at that stage, I kind of, I said, Damo, before I woke up, it was around 6 o'clock in the morning. It was just getting light, it was just beginning to come into daylight. And I got up and I went into where we had our medical kit, and I'd bought all the medical stuff. So I had an idea we had something like this to test myself. So I went in and just looked at it, and straight away I seen the rating and it said 86. And I went, oh, sugar. I went, oh no, because anything below 96 is dangerous level, blood clotting level. And then below that, so I was at 86. And I was going, oh, no. So I woke up Damo and I said, Damo, there's something going on here. And I told him the crack with the blood clots and how I knew what the readings should be and all this type of stuff. And I gave him the instrument to check your oxygen levels, and he read 98 straight away. Now, when I put it back on about 5 minutes later, I was back up to 88, but I didn't climb from there. And I was literally at this stage, I was like, and even to get in the cabin or anything like that was just a huge mission. So things just started going through my head. I was here, no, I can't be getting blood clots out here, because once you have blood clots, supposedly you're more prone to getting them again. And the thing is, because I've this reduced sensation in my legs, my circulation of my blood wouldn't be as good as what, say, yours would be. So again, blood clots arise from being, I suppose, having still in one position. Now, I know we're rowing all the time, but it was still in the one position. So again, all this thing was going through my head, and I was going, I have 3 kids at home. I always said, I'm taking on this challenge, but one thing I'm not going to do is put my life at risk.
And you felt it was, obviously, at that point?
Well, I don't know what I felt at the time, being honest with you. I was not thinking straight at all.
And was the conversation, so you say, listen, you're both playing this out, and then you both come to the conclusion, or you're like, listen, who says it, or how does that come about where you're like, right, it's done?
Well, when I told Damon the crack, I told him the history and what I'm feeling, he was going, oh man, we have to ring Chris Martin, our on ground support, and he's a world famous ocean rower, and he, really well respected man in the ocean rowing industry, So straight away I got to that phone, rang him up, put me through to him. I told him the symptoms, and he goes, okay, this is not good. And then he said, hold on there, I'll put you through to a maritime doctor. So 5 minutes later, we got the phone call, and maritime doctor, and I gave him the symptoms. At that stage, I just had in my head, okay, maybe what they'll say to me is, come back in 6 hours with the readings, maybe 12 hours, and then 24 hours, or something like that. Do you know what I mean? But after I gave them the readings, I gave them my history, they kind of go, well, what do you want to do? And I was like, well, this is not a decision I can make. And after I said that to him, the doctors went, you're gone. Not even 30 seconds. You're gone, you're finished. It was just that flat, that straight, you're done.
So you obviously tried to find out, is there a boat nearby, and eventually you get this massive cargo ship that comes in and lifts you away, and you go off to New York, and you go into hospital at that point, and they run all the tests, I presume. And
I actually didn't go into hospital in New York because number one, because of my spinal injury, health insurance doesn't cover a lot. I think travel insurance doesn't cover a lot because I've a lot of pre-existing conditions. So number one, there's very little point in me having health insurance travel, no matter what, because the laws put it down as condition. And also the expedition wasn't insurable.
Okay.
So I had no insurance. And that was obviously going through my mind as well in going back in the boat, and said, oh my God, I'm going to go into the hospital here now, and I'm going to have a 20 or 30,000 euro of a bill coming out of it, and so that was going through my mind. I was in contact with Paul Cleary, a good friend of myself and Damos, who was in New York, and all fairness, now there's people back in Ireland working away as well to see what they could do. So it was actually Paul who organised a really good doctor. So I went to the doctor straight away when he picked me up. And they took tests and things like that. And I just said to them, like, look, all I want to know is, am I safe to fly home? When I get home, I'll get everything sorted. I said, people give out about the health service in Ireland, but for me, I've never had anything but the highest of praise from it.
And the oxygen had righted itself at some point. And
no, I was still struggling, really struggling with the oxygen. So they gave me oxygen in the boat. Because it was a brand new, it was only 18 months old, this cargo, this tanker, which again, I was so lucky because I heard some very bad stories about some old tankers. So I got oxygen levels, and they got me up to, I think it was 92%. And they got up really high once they had the oxygen mask on me. But once it took off, and then once I was without it for a while, I dropped down again. So, and again, there was no medical experts on board, so all they were doing was taking readings and things like that, and give me whatever to keep me fresh. So when I got there, this is what I don't understand. Like, Damian's after coming off 112 days in the ocean, and he's functioning like nothing happened. For 4 to 5 weeks, I was struggling massively. Now, my blood oxygen levels is around 96, 97% now. It should be 98, 99. So I'm still not fully there, but I can train, I can do all that type of stuff. But for a period of time when I got off the boat, I just wasn't able to do anything that took a physical demand on me.
Right. When you talk about Damien there, it's almost like robot comes to mind. Like those last number of days, and people who've listened to the Deep Roots podcast and stuff will have got a sense of this anyway, but was there tension on the boat? Was it causing any disruption between the two of you? The fact that Damian was, I guess, feeling okay and feeling grand in comparison, but did that cause any kind of tensions on the boat itself?
No, that's the surprising thing. Prior to me doing the departure, so the first few days was a massive learning curve because we never got to do the, we should have tried to have got out for like a week over the continental shelf over Ireland to get a good learning experience of what it was like to be on a little boat on your own out there, but unfortunately we didn't get that opportunity. So for the first week, when we're really pushing hard and trying to get the kilometres, the nautical miles underneath the belt, I was doing all of my learning as well. So I found that first week difficult, very difficult, because the amount of times I banged my head off the side of the boat was just crazy, and the amount of times I burnt my hands from just the jet oil and trying to put it into the sachets for the food. But as that week passed, then I was getting more comfortable, and I think even Damian said, like I said, he could see that I was actually beginning to settle into a routine and everything like that. And like up to that last 2 days, I probably had my best day just beforehand. I was feeling great. I was feeling brilliant. I was going, okay, I'm beginning now to get into the swing of things. And then got into the Gulf Stream, and that's when things started getting a little bit easier. Now, there's nothing easy, by the way, but a little bit easier. And that's when I started failing. So that's, it's kind of gut-wrenching because that first block is really, really difficult. And you get into the Gulf Stream, and then you get that little bit of assistance bring you up towards Ireland, and you're going from 1 to 2 knots per hour to the next minute 4, 5, 6 knots per hour, and that's when I started failing. And that's. But there was no tension as such. I think Damien was quite quite good to me that way, you know.
There's a serious mental aspect to it as well, and like there's the famous photographs of just leaving Manhattan with the night skyline in the background, which is just insane when you think of the distance that was to go. Was there any a point maybe when you see the skyline behind you where you're like, Jesus, the enormity of the task is laid bare in front of you? Like the next time we touch land will be in Galway.
No, I don't let myself think that way. I was just there to do it day by day by day. And the funny thing is, people often say to me is like, you know, did you ever feel unsafe? And there was not one day I was out in that ocean whereby I felt unsafe on that boat.
Right.
And I don't know why, but I just never let myself think that way. Do you know? And that was the same with, I just remember having Manhattan in the background, and my thought was, good luck, see you again, you know. It wasn't about, oh, the next time I see land. I wasn't thinking that way at all. I don't know why. It just wasn't in my mindset thinking that the next time I'll see somebody else or land was going to be, you know, 55 days later. I just never, I don't know why, I just never thought that way.
What Shane is hinting at there was where we were chatting to Damian last week. He was, and I had listened to a load of the pod, and over that first couple of weeks, and I don't know how aware you were of what he was chatting about on the pod or whatever. If it was a soundproof situation, but it seemed to me like there was a tension between the two of you, that, you know, you were, as you've said yourself, like that, and why would you not be, your first ever, like you say, your first ever challenge of that nature, and maybe, you know, I don't know, struggling, but certainly coming to grips with it mentally as much as anything else. Whereas he was like, I want to get miles, I want to get miles, I want to get miles. And you're like, maybe you're in a slightly different space, and that in itself is creating a bit of tension. That was certainly the way he would maybe describe it when he was with us.
Well, personally, I thought I was actually really pulling out the stops in terms of the amount of mileage I was getting in. So I didn't, again, I knew setting off that the first few weeks was always going to be kind of a challenge, because we're getting set into your routine, and we're both in very uncomfortable surroundings, and we're getting used to each other as much as good mates and great mates we are. You know, the closer we ever slept beside each other was like 2 single beds in a big bedroom, you know. So there was a lot of learnings to be done there. But for me, maybe on his side, maybe he thought I was lacking, but I know from my side, I knew Damo wouldn't be lacking, you know, so I didn't have to have that mindset. But also I knew I was giving my all.
Yeah.
So I was very comfortable where I was, and I knew Damian, as his nature, would be giving his all as well. So for me, I didn't have that sense of as tension or anything like that. Maybe I think he preluded to it, that he had that tension on me, but I didn't definitely have it another way, because look, he's done it. I knew he'd be doing it, and I knew I was giving absolutely every bit I could give.
Yeah. The other thing he mentioned was he had, when you got off, he felt this anger. So he sped for, like, he basically said until he got into Galway Bay that he had this residual anger, which I guess on one level is, like I put it to him, that's a big emotion to have towards somebody. And on one level, I mean, I guess it's understandable. I know you sat down to you were doing an interview for the documentary, whatever. Have you sat, do you sit down? Because it's definitely obvious, right, chatting to you here this morning, that the two of you, you're clearly best mates, but you're on two different paths in terms of some of the experiences, which again is like, I mean, any 3 people you put in a room, 2 people you put in a room, you have a conversation, you leave. Sometimes people leave with totally different perceptions of it. But have you got a chance to sit down away from the limelight and sort of pick through stuff, or is your relationship just, you don't need that, you're just good friends, and that's not required almost?
Okay, so just you're on about different paths and things like that. So my path was, it's not a chosen path. It was a path that was ordained by my accident. Okay.
Yes.
So, I'm going to do this through default, really. Whereas, say, Damian's is a chosen path, and he's very driven and very focused on what he wants to achieve and so on. Whereas, obviously, I was kind of thrown into it, and then I obviously discovered that I really like challenge and so on. So obviously, our mindsets are a little bit different, you know, and we understand that. So in relation to how to say, like, so we haven't sat down, himself over a cup of coffee, over a pint, and had a chat about all these things yet, because Number one is Damian's absolute flat out with all the engagements and everything like that. But it's funny now you said that, because this morning, because he was coming up to, he has something in the Mansion House this morning, and we came up in 2 different cars. So I rang him around 7:30 and said, "Are you up?" You know, and he because we're obviously at that function together last night, and he said, "Yeah, I'm just in leak slip now." And I said, "Oh, you're okay. The traffic's fine." And at that stage, I said, "Look, well, we had a chat about other things." And then I said, "Look, Damo, when you're finished, I'm in Dublin. I'm flying out this evening, so I'm hanging around. When you're finished, he's going to Donegal." I said, "We'll grab a coffee." And it was the first time we'll be able to sit down away from everybody, not down in Galway where people will go into Damo. Like, you know, people come from, like, they'll be 100 metres away and they see Damo and they'll make a beeline for him.
He's hard to miss.
Yeah. And so the first time we'll have a chat. No, we'll go into a deep, meaningful conversation. Probably not. But just the first time we'll actually sit down and say, you know, well done, or whatever we need to say, you know. But no, we haven't.
Oh, you will. You'll get the chance to do it.
Exactly. It's just not the time.
It's funny when I think about like Damian's story and even the way the last night panned out. You're thinking, right, for whatever about the documentary, there's a movie in this, you know. And but more to that, there's like your story is a massive part of it, and like people, a lot of people wouldn't have realised backstory and what happened to you as well. Like when you talk about, you know, maybe you could have picked a smaller challenge, not smaller challenge, but a different challenge to start as your first one. Do you have like an idea of where you go from here? What's next?
I've thought about it several times. Now, look, as I said, I have 3 young kids. I'm busy enough with work. And I do want to do something, and I want to do it more in the sphere of raising money and awareness than anything else. But what I want to do, I still don't know, because nothing has kind of grasped me and say, that's what I want to do. But for me, the next project I want to do, so if I can say, at the time I walked across the country a year after my operation, or my accident, that was my project, and I was able to do it from start to finish, and I loved it. Because I'm a self-employed person. I've always been somebody who just grabs things and goes with it, and, you know, controls them start to finish. Whereas this Project Empower, I was complete opposite, and
you were the co-pilot.
And I struggled with that at times. So the next project I want to do is, and I will do something, but I said nothing's grasped me yet. But I'll be doing it. You know, that will be, I'll take ownership of it myself, and that I can look back at it with a lot of pride, and obviously something that I can complete.
Well, look, I think on that front, I think you can absolutely look back on, I think Shane nailed it earlier on when he said, given your journey, and like it wasn't how you would have designed it, obviously, to set out, but I mean, 2 weeks rowing in the Atlantic is a serious achievement. So, I mean, you should take that from it, and be sure that whatever you're up to the next time, will you give us a shout and come in, and we'll pick through it with you again.
Fair play, look.
Best luck with the coffee as well with Damo.
Yeah, thanks very much. If a black eye after,
I don't know who might end up with a black eye out of that one, but thanks a million, Fergus. Cheers. Thanks for coming in. Loads of lovely comments coming in as well, to say well done. So